The end of the generator. Opening in the companionway stairs, the front of the engine box opens with good access to the generator. Brand new phaser 5.5 or 6.5. What is this? 6.5 kW generator. This is a new generator, new install, new aluminum tube stringers bolted across the boat. There are switches on the generator control panel along with an hour meter. One is a breaker, which is for the AC current going to the panel, to the transfer switch located at the panel. The other one is a run and stop.
That breaker, how is that? How does that work? What's that for?
This is on the.
If that kicks out, well, that would possibly.
That one should kick first.
Okay.
Okay, because that's on the load side. But if this kicks, it's due to an overload on the AC current side. On alternating current on the house panel, wherever the load's coming from. This protects everything from the generator out. And I think that is a 30 amp, what's provided with the unit. There's a run and stop switch and a start and preheat switch for activation of the unit. When you're in here servicing it, this should stay in the down position, normal operation. There's a remote switch located in the walk-through on the port side of the boat that has two switches, two similar switches for normal operation of the generator. The oil check is right here. The oil filter is right here, serviceable. Electric fuel pump. Fuel filter for the generator is mounted on the starboard side. It's a Raycor 500, which goes to the engine, which has its own fuel filter. So there are redundant filters for the generator. And both are easily changed.
Redundant on the engine?
Yes, there is. On the starboard side, this Raycor 500 is for the Yanmar propulsion engine, and there is another filter mounted on the Yanmar itself. So you have redundant fuel filters for both devices here.
And when you change out one, should you change out both of them? I mean, or this filter is just physically a... This
filter is the workhorse doing the job of filtering the fuel. These are good filters, should not cause you any problems. You have clean tanks and all new lines, so you should not have any fuel issues unless you buy bad fuel which has water or sediment in it. That will show up in the bowls, which you can shine a flashlight in there and see very clearly what's going on in the bowls, showing any water and or sediment occurring in the bowls of these filters. I recommend changing the remote or the filters that are mounted on the devices, on the engine and the generator, every third fuel filter change. Because as long as these filters are doing their job, there should be nothing, the other filter shouldn't be catching anything. It should be getting only clean fuel. It's just a redundancy setup. But good practice is every third fuel change the filters on the engines. Okay, now we're going to talk about fuel distribution. Excuse me. Okay, to select fuel from two tanks, which are mounted under the salon sole, two tanks that have been cleaned and replumbed, new hoses. There's a fuel manifold located under the engine Raycor filter, which is on the port side of the boat. There's a black aluminum manifold body that has two switches on it. One selects tank 1, the other selects tank 2. This decides where the fuel going to the engine and the generator, which tank it's being drawn from. On this boat, the two tanks are plumbed with an overflow in the fill line. So there would be some slosh effect back and forth from one tank to the other, allowing some natural fuel transfer from one tank to the other. But once the fuel level has gone below the fill hose of the tank, then it would be individually drawn from one to the other. And they're marked tank 1 and tank 2. Now that is on the supply coming from the tank to the manifold, which goes to both engine Raycor and generator Raycor filter. There are isolation valves located on the input side and the exit side of the Raycor. So when changing fuel filters, you simply come down here, turn both of these off, open the filter. You should not allow any air into the system at that point, as long as these valves are closed. You change the filter, you open, leaving the engine side of the valve closed, open the supply side, leave the top of the filter open. There is a hand squeeze bulb which you can activate. Fill the filter up to just overflowing. Put the cap on. Make sure the rubber ring has been wetted so it seals. Rotate this so you get a good seal. And there's a new seal and a new O-ring that comes with every filter package. Change those, and then as this fuel comes right up to the top, which you can easily control by squeezing this bulb, to where it's just beginning to overflow, then crank the top down and seal it up, and you should have no air in the system. Remembering to open the valves on both sides of the filter. Now the two valves located down on the manifold, which we discussed, you can open one to select which tank you want, or close the other one. So you're drawing out of one tank only, leaving the second tank in reserve.
So right now it's set to draw from
what tank is this? Number one?
Don't know.
Well, you can number them. They're both right together. It doesn't matter one or the other.
Yeah.
So just so you know that
The other valve is closed.
It's closed. So it's only drawing on one.
Okay.
But as long as they're both full, they're going to draw off both of them until it gets below the neck of the filler line, because of the way the tanks are plumbed. Okay. Going over to the port side, staying on fuel, we have the return manifold. We have a return line coming from the generator, small line, coming over to the top of this return manifold. We have a return line coming from the Yanmar propulsion engine over to the top of this manifold. This is the return fuel, excess fuel that's coming back from both engines, generator and engine, into the tank. You should select whichever tank you're using down here. You should open these valves. Tank 1 is marked here, tank 2.
They're both open.
They're both open, which is just going to pump it back into both tanks. When you're full, that's fine. But I'd suggest if we're running on tank 1, you close the return on tank 2 and leave one open. That way the fuel is going back to the tank that you're drawing from, and otherwise you will just be pumping it into tank that's not being used. It doesn't matter, but for monitoring fuel levels in tanks, you should have the return going back to the tank that you're using to give you a good read.
And now this filter also has the same type of
setup.
But you don't have a control on which tank that's coming from?
Over here.
This over here controls
both of these filters.
Filters.
Whichever tank, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whichever, you're drawing from one tank or the other.
Okay.
Or both, if you wanted to open both of them. It doesn't matter, but there really makes no sense of drawing generator separate tank makes the system more complex. Keeping it this way, you're drawing off of tank 1 or tank 2.
Gotcha.
Or both. But there's really no sense in running a whole other redundant system, because the fuel source is all coming from the same tanks. It's not like we have anything to gain by adding another system for another manifold, for supply manifold for the generator, but it's not necessary. All right, looking in the engine box, the front of the generator box under the companionware stairs. On the port side is the strainer for the engine seawater intake, located immediately on the port side, easily accessible for cleaning, which this goes in. The seacock for it is located right aft of the strainer. Very easy to get to, very self-explanatory. Hoses clear in sight, which seacock controls what. We have a mirror image, or a smaller setup, on the port side for the generator. The seacocks are open from here straight to the cooling system. Raw water pump with impeller on the generator. Same advice on that. Annually change impellers on here, and that impeller's available right here. 4 screws case off, and but you must close the seacocks when you open either one of these impellers, because they're below the water line and they will flood. Okay.
And how often do you check and service these raw water?
Monthly is a good idea, because depending if you got a lot of weed in the water, a lot of debris, floating debris, they'll tend to clog up. But just open them up. The baskets have baskets in them. You lift them out, clean them, put them back in. Pretty simple process. Make sure that you seat this top back on level and tighten the two nuts equally, or these tend to want to leak sometimes. Make sure the seal is good on that. When you take the basket out, you have to turn the basket to make sure that it is sitting as a little tit in the bottom of the strainer that the filter fits over, and you have to make sure you're on that and it's all the way down, or the lid won't clear. And that's pretty all self-explanatory when you got it opened up. These are both new strainers in good condition. Located on the forward bulkhead in front of the